051, a fatal order from the team's top management. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. With the 2009 to 2010 season about to kick off, Germany's second-tier league, Bundesliga 2, is drawing national media attention. Naturally, the Bundesliga gets most of the spotlight. However, Bundesliga 2's opening game is scheduled 2.5 hours before the Bundesligas, giving it a chance to grab early attention. Bundesliga 2's first round begins at 6 p.m. on August 7, 2009, with 3 simultaneous matches. Later that evening, at 8:30 p.m., the Bundesliga officially starts with a single game, Wolfsburg hosting Stuttgart, for Munich 1860, led by coach Tong Yi. Their first game of the new Bundesliga 2 season is set for August 9, 2009, at 12:30 p.m. That time slot isn't exactly player-friendly. Many guys aren't fully awake, and it's tough to get into game mode. Of course, hopefully, a team won't have too many midday games throughout the season, so it's manageable. Tong Yi is taking this upcoming match seriously. It's his first game, and he knows all eyes are on him. He can't afford any slip-ups, or he'll be ripped to shreds. The one bright spot right now is that Munich 1860 fans have cooled down a bit. Their 8-0 victory over Paderborn in the German Cup gave Tong Yi some breathing room. Sure, they still have doubts and grumbles, but they're not camped outside the club demanding his head. There are still some diehards protesting, but their numbers are smaller. Many fans are choosing to give Tong Yi a chance and see what happens. They don't really have a personal vendetta against Tong Yi, they just want what's best for Munich 1860. Right now, Tong Yi doesn't seem as bad as they thought. He doesn't appear to be dragging the team down, so they aren't as outraged. The atmosphere is definitely better for Tong Yi, but the pressure is even higher. He knows one bad performance could unleash a whole new wave of critics, even more ruthless than before. That's why he absolutely needs to win this game. Just then, Chairman Baker summoned Tong Yi to his office. Tong Yi looked at Baker and Stoffs and asked, "Mr. Chairman, what can I do for you?" Baker gestured for Tong Yi to sit. "The season's about to start, and I wanted to see if you're ready. You know how important this game is to us. We can't afford to lose, period." He stared intently at Tong Yi. Tong Yi glanced at Stoffs and replied, "Don't worry, Mr. Chairman. The team is fully prepared, and I'm very confident. Barring any surprises, we'll win." Before Baker could respond, Stoffs jumped in. "So confident, huh? Don't underestimate your opponent, or you'll regret it." Tong Yi smiled. "Thanks for the reminder. But honestly, I am confident. Our opponent isn't that strong, not even as good as Paderborn. Our chances of winning are excellent." Baker raised an eyebrow. "Weaker than Paderborn?" Tong Yi nodded. "That's my assessment." Baker nodded in agreement. "In that case, good. We have to win, no question about it." Tong Yi assured Baker he would, and then left the office. Honestly, Tong Yi was surprised by how much Baker was emphasizing this game. Shouldn't the chairman be easing the pressure on the coach and players? Why was he adding to it? Tong Yi suspected Stoffs was behind it, but Tong Yi didn't really care. Even without Baker's pep talk, he's determined to win and get the season off to a strong start. Tong Yi left the building and headed back to the training field. Winkler immediately approached him. "Boss, what did the chairman want?" Tong Yi shook his head. "Nothing much, just hoping we get our first league win." Winkler nodded, understanding. He looked at Tong Yi and asked, "Are you confident? What do you think of Koblenz?" "Yes, Munich 1860's opponent for the first game of the new season is Koblenz," Tong Yi said. "Of course I'm confident. Just look at the players out there. You think we can lose with that kind of energy?" Seeing the spirited players on the field, Winkler agreed that winning shouldn't be too difficult. Then Tong Yi asked, "Any news about Michael? How long has he been in England?" Winkler had been in contact with Bruns recently. They had spoken that morning. Winkler replied, "I heard from Michael, but it's not great news." Tong Yi turned to Winkler, concerned. "Has Tristan signed with another team?" Addis? In Tong Yi's mind, Tristan returned to Spain and joined Addis. Winkler shook his head. "No, it's not that bad." Tong Yi breathed a sigh of relief. As long as he hadn't joined another team, but Winkler's next words made Tong Yi uneasy. Winkler continued, Michael learned that Tristan wasn't in England anymore and had gone back to Spain. They missed each other, so he had to chase him to Spain. While it wasn't the worst-case scenario, it was still pretty bad. Tristan obviously went back to Spain to negotiate with Spanish teams. Their Munich 1860 team was now behind other teams. It was hard to say whether he could sign Tristan. He was really optimistic about Tristan, what a pity. Tong Yi responded, that's bad enough, but hopefully Michael can bring us some good news. Tristan is really important to us. Winkler nodded in agreement. Tong Yi looked seriously at the training field, observing his players' state and mentality. To be honest, the Munich 1860 players were in good condition, and the big win in the German Cup had helped them. On the field, the players were active and dedicated, which satisfied Tong Yi. Seeing that there were no problems with the players, he turned to Winkler. Stay here and watch. I'm going to the medical center. Winkler nodded and continued to watch the training session. Tong Yi headed straight to the medical center, found his friend Leo. He looked at the unshaven Wagner and asked, how's Felipe doing? Will he be ready for the first game of the Bundesliga too? Tong Yi has always been concerned about Sendero's situation. Senderos had some minor injuries before coming to Munich 1860, along with old injuries that hadn't healed. Tong Yi wanted to address these issues. Wagner replied, Felipe is improving, better than we expected. But he'll need more time to fully recover. He could play in closed games, but we don't recommend it. Tong Yi listened carefully and nodded. Wagner continued, Felipe's injury needs to be completely resolved. Otherwise, this old injury will always be with him. For the sake of his career, we don't recommend he play. Tong Yi nodded. Okay, I understand. I won't push him. Focus on treating Felipe. I won't let him play for now. Wagner smiled. I knew you'd say that. You're different from other coaches. I'm optimistic about you, Tong Yi said, stop flattering me. When can Felipe be back on the field? Yes, Tong Yi is very concerned about this. Senderos is a key part of his plan. At this stage, Given Ionise is not yet able to meet Tong Yi's requirements and can only barely cope. Wagner thought for a moment, flipped through his folder, and said, at least a month. That's too long. He said to Wagner, okay, I understand. I'm leaving Felipe in your hands, Leo. Wagner reassured Tong Yi and went back to work. Leaving the medical room, Tong Yi was in a pretty good mood. But he was really hoping Senderos could recover soon. After taking care of these matters, Tong Yi was scheduled to attend the pre-match press conference for the first game. This conference would be held at the Allianz Stadium. Tong Yi called Campbell and De Bruyne, and they set off together. 052, Arrogant Koblenz people. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Allianz Arena press conference hall was packed. More specifically, it was full of journalists. They were all there for Munich 1860, actually, they were there for Tong Yi. He was the first Chinese head coach in German professional soccer and also the youngest. That made him a huge story and a major draw. Jacob, of course, wouldn't miss this. Munich 1860's German Cup win hadn't sat well with him. He was there to stir up trouble for Tong Yi and ensure he didn't win again. Not on his watch. Sitting next to Jacob was the attractive reporter Hannah. She was glued to the entrance, eager for the press conference to begin. The room buzzed with reporters chatting, a bit chaotic. Then a group walked in, and the room went silent. The visiting team's coaches and players entered, the reporters took their seats, and the conference was about to start. Just as the Koblenz crew settled, Tong Yi led the Munich 1860 team in. Spotlights flashed, and every eye was on Tong Yi. The faces of the Koblenz staff turned sour, some even betraying their jealousy. Why? Why all the attention on this rookie? Tong Yi, smiling, approached the podium and extended his right hand to Koblenz head coach Uwe Rappold. Welcome to the Allianz Arena, Coach Rappold. Tong Yi knew the silver-haired coach. He'd managed Cologne and played in the Bundesliga but was quickly relegated. Still, Tong Yi wouldn't underestimate him. Rappold, stone-faced, shook Tong Yi's hand briefly. Thank you. Then he sat down, ignoring Tong Yi. Click. The reporters snapped photos, capturing the moment. Tong Yi raised an eyebrow. It seemed Rappold had a problem with him. He shrugged it off and took his seat, while the Munich 1860 players glared at Rappold, finding him arrogant. With everyone seated, press officer Detrick announced the start of the conference. Rappold wasted no time. The new season is about to begin, and we've prepped hard. We're in peak condition. We're confident we'll win every game, no matter who we face. Rappold oozed confidence, acting like he was invincible. Tong Yi didn't react, as if he hadn't heard a word. Rappold continued, I've studied Munich 1860 closely. Their team isn't what it used to be. Too many rookies, some without any real experience. Seriously, who wins with a bunch of kids? Koblenz will take this. Bang bang bang. The reporters applauded Rappold, agreeing with his assessment. Rappold didn't even look at Tong Yi, as if they'd already won. When Rappold finished, reporters immediately raised their hands to ask questions. Rappold pointed to Jacob. Jacob was a well-known Bild reporter in Bundesliga 2. Rappold knew him and wanted to give him preferential treatment. Plus, they were on good terms. Jacob stood, giving Tong Yi a smug look. Then, he asked, Mr. Rappold, what do you think of your opponent's head coach? Had you heard of him before? Rappold turned slightly, leaned back, glanced contemptuously at Tong Yi, and shook his head. Then he turned back around and sat down. The Munich 1860 players were furious. This guy was way too arrogant, Rappold said calmly. Honestly, I hadn't heard that name before this season. I didn't even know there was a Chinese coach in German soccer. A Chinese coach? Does he even know soccer? Why did Munich 1860 hire a Chinese coach? Are German coaches not good enough? I don't get it. Jacob was loving it. Rappold was crushing it. Rappold continued, I don't know about others. But I sure as hell won't lose to any Chinese coach. Koblenz will win. This game will prove that you can't just buy your way into success in soccer. A rich girlfriend can get you the job, but she can't win games for you. Tong Yi frowned, surprised at the old man's prejudice. It seemed the Germans could be pretty closed-minded. Rappold continued, after seeing Munich 1860's signings this season, I'm already feeling sorry for their fans. Only an amateur would make those choices. Playing a team like that will be a walk in the park. We'll win, no doubt. Rappold didn't care about Tong Yi or the Munich 1860 players. The tension was palpable. This was going to be a fierce match. Jacob was thrilled with Rappold's answer and sat down, looking at Tong Yi like he'd already lost. Rappold added, and one more thing, professional soccer is not a joke, and not everyone can just jump in and play. Tong Yi raised his eyebrows, remaining calm. Then, Rappold picked another reporter, who immediately asked, Mr. Rappold, what do you think of the young player on the Munich 1860 team who had a hat-trick of assists in the German Cup? The 18-year-old De Bruyne's hat-trick had made waves in Germany, Rappold said. That kid has potential. Sure, he's a good young player. But that's all it is. The German Cup is known for upsets. It's not the first time a young guy has a performance like that. We shouldn't make too much of it. He still needs time to develop before he's ready for the Bundesliga. If he plays, I'll teach him a lesson. Pro soccer ain't easy. Rappold clearly loved the line pro soccer ain't easy. He kept repeating it like he was some veteran. De Bruyne frowned, clearly angry. The reporters captured De Bruyne's expression with their cameras. Another reporter asked, Mr. Rappold, what should your team focus on when playing Munich 1860? Rappold said casually, we should focus on not celebrating too hard when we score, so we don't hurt the fragile feelings of Munich 1860 fans. Wow! That was harsh. Was Rappold going too far? Was he just trying to provoke Tong Yi? It made people wonder if they had history. Rappold seemed to be taking his chance to lash out at Tong Yi. Jacob, loving it, gave Rappold a thumbs up. Tong Yi and the Munich 1860 players looked livid. Rappold was asking for it. They were going to make him regret his arrogance. Then, the media interviewed the Koblenz players. Koblenz forward Shevki Kuchi said, Campbell is strong, no doubt. I played against him in England. I looked up to him. He was amazing. But that was then. He's old now. His skills have declined. He should retire, because his time is over. I'll show him that in this game. Ouch. They were more brutal than the last, and these words were even more cutting than Rappold's. The reporters focused their cameras on Campbell, eager to see his reaction, but they were disappointed. Campbell crossed his arms, closed his eyes, and leaned back, unfazed. He was ignoring Kuchi, which made Kuchi look foolish. Then, Koblenz center-back Mdiji Maverick said, Munich 1860 strikers are nothing special. I watched that German Cup game. It was nothing to write home about. Beating a team fresh from Bundesliga 2 isn't a huge accomplishment. We would have crushed them even harder. I'm not afraid of any of Munich 1860's forwards. We'll win this game for sure, and they won't score a single goal on my watch. 053, our positioning is the league championship. You are listening at NovelsThe. You could tell the people of Koblenz were brimming with confidence. The reporters on the scene seemed to agree. Beating Paderborn in the German Cup, like Munich 1860 did, wasn't much of an achievement. Paderborn was just a newly promoted team, still playing in the German third division last season. A win against them didn't mean squat. If you can't even win against Paderborn, you might as well head straight down to Germany's third division. That's where you belong. After hearing those words, Jacobsen nodded confidently. Suddenly, everyone turned to stare at Munich 1860's head coach, Tong Yi, eager to see what the rookie would say. Seeing all eyes on him, Tong Yi calmly adjusted the microphone. Jacob frowned, thinking, what a show. Tong Yi began, this being the first game of the new season, Munich 1860 is taking it very seriously. Since day one, we've been preparing for this. After all this time, we're well prepared. My players are in great shape and ready to go. While they might not be at their absolute peak, they're more than ready to take down Koblenz. Rappold shot Tong Yi a cold look, his eyes like daggers. The Koblenz players were clearly angry, glaring at Tong Yi. This damn Chinese newbie dared to look down on them like that. He had a death wish. They were determined to teach Munich's 1860 a lesson and show them what Koblenz was made of. Tong Yi ignored them and continued, more importantly, we're playing at home, which is a huge advantage. No long travel, no adjusting to the stadium climate. We have everything we need to win. So, no matter how prepared Koblenz thinks they are, they can't escape defeat. Rappold glared at Tong Yi again, barely containing his rage. Tong Yi pressed on, besides, Koblenz isn't exactly a powerhouse. They're way too confident. Frankly, they're not even as good as Paderborn, who we just beat. There's no comparison with us. After one game, they'll remember their place. Just like last season, they'll be fighting relegation, and they'll be favorites to go down. Tong Yi's words weren't pretty, but there was truth to them. Last season, after 34 Bundesliga matches, Koblenz had 11 wins, 8 draws, and 15 losses, scoring 47 goals, conceding 57, and a goal difference of -10, earning 38 points, placing them 14th in the 2008-2009 Bundesliga season. They were neck and neck with 13th-ranked Rostock and 15th-placed Frankfurt, and only 2 points ahead of 16th-placed Osnabrück, who got relegated. They were lucky to avoid relegation, so, in Tong Yi's eyes, Koblenz was practically a German third-division team. Koblenz's strength might not even be better than Paderborn's. Rappold looked furious, really hating Tong Yi. Because the truth hurts most. Rappold was stung by Tong Yi's words. The reporters exchanged glances, surprised. David Tong might have a point. The Koblenz players looked insulted. They were holding back their fury, swearing to make Munich's 1860 pay. Tong Yi kept going. Also, in the first round of the German Cup, Koblenz only beat the amateur team Concordia 4-0. Honestly, that team is much worse than Paderborn, and they only won 4-0. We won 8-0. So, how could Munich 1860 lose? Rappold was speechless, just glaring at Tong Yi. Of course, Jacob wasn't happy either. He hated Tong Yi's arrogance, but Tong Yi was speaking facts, so it was hard to argue. Tong Yi finally said, so, we're not under any pressure at home against Koblenz. Our players are relaxed and confident. Munich 1860 will win this game. A smattering of applause broke out. Tong Yi's words were pretty good, reporters raised their hands, even Jacob. He knew Tong Yi wouldn't call on him, but there was a sliver of hope. What if? Tong Yi picked a reporter at random, of course, it wasn't him. Jacob was crushed and hated Tong Yi even more, damn asterisk, he thought, this guy is too cautious. Jacob glared at Tong Yi, but Tong Yi ignored him, leaving him stewing in his frustration. The selected reporter asked, Mr. Tong Yi, what do you think of your opponent, Mr. Rappold? How well do you know him? Rappold and others perked up, looking at Tong Yi. Tong Yi said casually, I don't know much about him, haven't even heard his name. Is he new to coaching, like me? But he looks too old for that. Rappold went pale with anger. Tong Yi was doing it on purpose, humiliating him, the reporters gasped. This Chinese upstart had no respect for his elders. What kind of character was that? Were all Chinese like this? Tong Yi continued, hey, if I don't know him, I don't know him. All I know is what my assistant Winkler told me yesterday. My opponent once coached a Bundesliga team, but they got relegated, and he got fired. Rappold looked even worse, you don't kick a man when he's down. Why was this Chinese rookie always attacking him so personally? Rappold hated Tong Yi more than ever. Many reporters now had a negative impression of Tong Yi, but Tong Yi didn't care. These guys were hypocrites. When Rappold was mocking him, Tong Yi, where was their indignation? Tong Yi shrugged it off. Tong Yi said, and since he came to Koblenz in 2007, the team has been fighting relegation every year, barely surviving at the last minute. That shows he's not a great coach. Should we really expect to lose to a coach from a second division relegation team? Tong Yi had Rappold pinned, humiliating him again. Rappold couldn't take it anymore. He wanted to walk out, but his assistant, Uwe Cassina, held him back. Tong Yi finished and picked another reporter. The reporter asked, Mr. David, since you're so confident, what score do you think you'll win by? Tong Yi looked at the reporter and said, look, Koblenz is a relegation team. They're not as good as us. We should beat them by at least 2 goals. He turned to his players and asked, are you confident? Campbell and the others shouted, yes. We'll win this game. Tong Yi smiled and said, see. My players are pumped. We're at home. What reason do we have to lose? The reporters were speechless. Munich's 1860 was too cocky, didn't they know pride comes before a fall? Tong Yi chose another reporter, who asked, Mr. David, you call Koblenz a relegation team, but what about Munich 1860? Aren't you a relegation team? Tong Yi looked at the reporter and said, when I started, I said Munich 1860 would always compete for the championship. Our only goal is to win the Bundesliga too. We've been working hard for that, and we want to start with this game. Rappold scoffed, looking sarcastic. Tong Yi ignored him and asked, anything else? If not, the press conference is over. Hannah stood up and asked, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Couch said you're too old and should retire. Your thoughts? Campbell sneered, you'll see how old I am on the field. Watch me deal with him. I could handle 3 of him on my own. We played against each other in England, and he always got humiliated by me, never scored on me. And that's not going to change now. Kutcher was furious. Campbell was too arrogant. He vowed to break through Campbell's defense and score a goal in this game to teach him a lesson. Another reporter asked, Mr. Lauder, Mr. Maverick said Munich 1860's forwards are too weak to score on him. Your thoughts? Lauder said coldly, last season, I scored 15 goals in the Bundesliga too, and 3 goals in 2 games against Koblenz. Where does he get this confidence? We scored 3 goals against you last season, and I can do it again. Munich's 1860 went wild, applauding. Maverick looked furious. He was being publicly insulted, he thought, that's because I wasn't there. If I had been, you wouldn't have scored a goal. Just wait, I'll mark you in this game and not let you score, The game hadn't started, but the players and coaches were already at each other's throats. It was tense, this drew even more attention, and fans were eager for the game, especially Munich 1860 fans. They wanted to see what Tong Yi could do. Could he lead them to victory? They couldn't wait to get to the Allianz Arena to watch the game. After the teams returned to their training grounds, they worked hard, making final preparations for the game. As the game approached, the players grew more impatient. The first match of the 2009-2010 Bundesliga season between Munich 1860 and Koblenz was about to begin. 054, teach the 1860 people in Munich a good lesson. You are listening at NovelsThe. On August 9, 2009, the sun blazed down on Munich, Germany, at 12:30 p.m. It was August, and Munich was heating up. Despite the strong sun, the temperature was comfortable, perfect for a soccer match. Nothing could stop the Munich 1860 fans from packing the Allianz Arena to watch their team face Koblenz. The crowd was substantial, probably close to 30,000. While it couldn't compare to a Bayern Munich game, it was still a decent turnout. The atmosphere was electric. Fans from both sides were singing and chanting, clearly eager to let loose after a long wait. Hello, everyone. This is German TV 2, and I'm Fred. Today, we're bringing you the opening match of the 2009-2010 German Football League season, Munich 1860 vs Koblenz. Joining me in the booth is the one and only Jürgen Klinsmann. Fred announced. Glad to be here, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, Klinsmann said. The Bundesliga 2 season was finally underway, and the fans were buzzing with excitement. Of course, the 2009-2010 Bundesliga season had kicked off a couple of days prior, so some fans had already gotten their fill of live soccer. They had enjoyed it, and they were all very excited. On the evening of August 7, 2009, 3 matches opened the Bundesliga season. St. Pauli edged out Ehren 2-1, Oberhausen fell to Union Berlin 0-3, and Karlsruhe drew 1-1 with Aachen. Yesterday, 2 more Bundesliga division games took place. Düsseldorf crushed Paderborn 3-0, and Kaiserslautern dominated Fürth 4-1. Today, 3 games are happening simultaneously, including Munich 1860's home opener against Koblenz. Inside the locker rooms, both teams were receiving their coach's final instructions. The Koblenz locker room was thick with tension. Head coach Rappold scanned the players with a sharp gaze, then lowered his voice. If anyone lacks confidence, speak up now. I'll replace you. Anyone? The Koblenz players shook their heads. Rappold nodded, satisfied. You need to believe you can win this game because we can't afford to lose. You all know that Munich 1860 disrespected us in the pre-game press conference. They think we're a relegation team. They think we're going to lose. They don't think you're good enough. The Koblenz players' faces darkened, their anger palpable. They felt insulted. Rappold pressed on. Do you think you can do it? The Koblenz players roared back. Yes. We can. Rappold nodded, pleased. I know you can. What's so special about Munich 1860? Look at their summer signings, has-beens and rookies who haven't proven anything. Are they better than you? No way. Play hard, stay focused, and we'll take this game. The players nodded eagerly, agreeing with Rappold's assessment. Rappold continued, leave it all on the field. Show Munich 1860 that they're out of their league. They're not worthy to carry your jockstraps. Beat them so badly they'll question everything. Can you do that? Yes. 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 The Koblenz players shouted in unison. Rappold nodded, satisfied and confident. He smirked. Those bastards are going to see how good Koblenz really is today. He continued, all right, here's the game plan against Munich. Even though Rappold believed they could easily defeat Munich 1860, he still needed to do some things that should be done. A lion fights a rabbit with all his strength, and they are no exception. Rappold looked at his 2 fullbacks. Munich 1860 attacks primarily down the wings, especially that Belgian kid on the right. Skipan, you're glued to him all game. Don't give him any room to breathe, any space to pass. Skipan nodded firmly. Understood. Rappold continued, he's young and inexperienced, but don't underestimate him. Stick to him like glue from the first whistle. Make him earn every inch. Show him what second division defense is all about. Got it? Skipan grinned. Don't worry, he'll be begging for mercy. The other players laughed. They gave a thumbs up to Scraggy and called on them not to feel pity, but to let the Belgian boy see the cruelty of professional football. Scratch laughed and said, "Don't worry, I will prevent him from crying and going home to his mother." Laughter erupted in the Koblenz locker room. After a moment, Rappold continued, "Martin, you've got the French kid. He likes to cut inside and make runs. Shut down those two things, and he's a non-factor." Kaffer nodded. "Consider it done, boss. I'll take care of him." To be honest, he didn't understand why Tong Yi was relying on so many rookies. Were they really that good? Or did Tong Yi just look down on older players? Maybe he thought he couldn't control the veterans and brought in younger players instead. It was ridiculous. This Tong Yi guy doesn't know anything about soccer. Café decided that he must teach this French boy and soft-boiled boy a lesson today and let them know the cruelty of professional football. Professional football is not about playing house. Rappold turned to his center-back, Maverick. "Medij, I hate to give the other team credit, but Lauder is a threat. He's a former national team player. You need to be on your game. Shut him down. No chances." "Got it." Rappold was wary of Lauder. Lauder had been a rising star in German soccer and a national team member. Plus, he bagged 15 goals in the second division last season. He couldn't be taken lightly. Maverick said, "Boss, don't sweat it. I'll be all over him." Rappold nodded, satisfied. Finally, he addressed their forward, Kuchi. "Shevki, we're counting on you to score. I believe in you." Dakiki nodded confidently. "I'll find the back of the net." There are two Kuchis in the Koblenz team, one is Shevki Kuchi, and the other is Nyazi Kuchi. These two are brothers. Shevki is the eldest brother and Nyazi is the younger brother. They are generally distinguished by their size in all teams. The Finland international has previously played in England, mostly in the championship. After the end of last season, he was invited by his younger brother to join Dow League. Brents signed a 2-year contract with Koblenz. His younger brother Nyazi was Koblenz's main forward last season, but he was seriously injured later. It would affect this season, so he recommended his brother to the club, and Koblenz introduced Shevki. Rappold had been impressed by Shevki and approved the signing. Shevki had stepped in for his injured brother and become Koblenz's starting forward. He scored 3 goals in the preseason warm-up match and performed well. In the recently concluded German Cup match, he scored twice and completely conquered the players of Ruppelt and Koblenz. Rappold had high expectations for him in this game. Pleased with Shevki's response, Rappold concluded, "All right, that's it. Now get out there and play your hearts out. Show Munich 1860 what real soccer is all about." The Koblenz players roared, "We will win." Then, they filed out and headed into the tunnel, ready for the match. In the Munich 1860 locker room, Tong Yi looked at his players and said, "I don't need to say much. You know they've been trash-talking us. They don't respect you. They think we can't attack, we can't defend." The Munich 1860 players looked unhappy, even angry. They felt disrespected. Tong Yi continued, "They said they're going to teach you what pro soccer is all about. That's a joke, right? A relegation threat team talking like that." The Munich 1860 players were seething. Tong Yi said, "Honestly, I have complete faith in you. I don't need to go over the game plan again, we've covered it in training. We should beat them easily, as long as you give it your all. Show them what you're made of. Embarrass them. Make them regret underestimating you. Show the world what you can do and prove that we're serious about winning the league. Understand?" "Got it." The Munich 1860 players yelled back. Tong Yi waved his hand. "Let's go." The Munich 1860 players charged out, eager to devour their prey. The battle was about to begin. 0:55, the Koblenz team returns as the away team. You are listening at NovelsThe. Tong Yi walked into the Allianz Arena through the players' tunnel. The most hardcore Munich 1860 fans in the stadium immediately erupted. hurling insults at him, but their shouts were noticeably quieter than before. It seemed Tong Yi had won over some fans with his impressive German Cup victory. Maybe these fans weren't completely sold on Tong Yi, or ready to fully support him. But they were taking a wait-and-see approach, not as aggressive as they once were. This was a step in the right direction for Tong Yi. He was confident he could win them over completely. Ignoring the hecklers, Tong Yi headed straight for his coaching bench. Rappold, walking in behind him, overheard the jeers and smirked. Figures, he thought. These Germans will never accept a lowlife like you. You're not welcome here. Secretly pleased, Rappold wanted to rub it in Tong Yi's face, but Tong Yi didn't give him the chance. He ignored Rappold's outstretched hand and quickly took his seat. Rappold's face darkened, and he glared at Tong Yi's back, seething with anger. Just you wait, he fumed. He immediately signaled to his players on the field to launch an all-out attack, holding nothing back. He wanted to show that pansy what they were made of, so Tong Yi would never be able to hold his head high again. Tong Yi glanced at Rappold and smirked. He immediately called Costa over and said, "Diego, you see how cocky their players are, right? Especially their center-back, Maverick. He was bad-mouthing all our forwards before the game. I bet he's gonna focus on Benjamin, which means you'll have plenty of chances. You gotta seize him and shut those guys up." "Got it." Costa's face was grim. "Got it," he said coldly. Tong Yi patted Costa on the back, and Costa ran onto the field to join his teammates. "Hello viewers and fans, today's game is about to begin, and the players are ready to go," Fred announced. The referee blew the whistle to start the match. Koblenz, the visiting team, kicked off and immediately launched a ferocious attack. They weren't messing around with any feeling-out process, they came out swinging. They weren't kidding. They really looked down on Munich 1860. No pretense, no testing the waters, just straight into attack mode. Fred exclaimed, surprised. Klinsmann added, "Yeah, Koblenz is being a little too confident. I wonder if they even watched Munich 1860's last game against Paderborn. If they had, they wouldn't be doing this. It's risky." The Munich 1860 fans immediately felt the danger. Koblenz's reaction was completely unexpected. Were these guys just unleashed from a cage? Attacking this recklessly? Weren't they worried about leaving huge gaps in their defense? Koblenz pressed forward across the entire field. They weren't playing like a team fighting relegation, they were playing like a championship contender. It was clear they weren't taking Munich 1860 seriously. Seeing this, Tong Yi wasn't worried at all. He was relaxed. His pre-game tactics had worked perfectly. He had gotten under Koblenz's skin and wound them up. This was all part of the plan. The game was in the bag. Rappold, on the other hand, felt the same way. He thought his players were in top form and completely focused. Facing a weak Munich 1860, there was no way they could lose. He was ecstatic. An opportunity. Koblenz has an opportunity. The winger crosses the ball, looking for Kuchi in the middle. Kuchi's got a chance. Fred shouted, excitement in his voice. The Munich 1860 fans tensed up. They didn't expect their opponents to get a shot so quickly. Munich 1860 is in trouble. Rappold on the sidelines was ecstatic, sensing victory. The boys from Munich are just too weak. No match for us. This game is ours. Kuchi, preparing to strike the ball, felt the same way. He sneered to himself, "Campbell, you're going down at my feet. You're just a stepping stone to my success." He watched the ball approach and launched a volley, but Campbell easily blocked the shot, sticking out a leg and stealing the ball from under Kuchi's feet. Campbell had anticipated Kuchi's every move, from Kuchi's positioning, blocking attempt, stance, and shooting technique. Campbell had predicted it all. "You think you can beat me with that?" Campbell chuckled to himself. "That's a joke." Kuchi's face turned red with anger. The fans applauded Campbell. His frontal defense was perfect, giving Kuchi no chance. Campbell was amazing. They had assumed that Campbell's age had slowed him down and that he couldn't keep up with the pace of the second division. But he was playing with ease, toying with Kuchi. He was on another level. They cheered for Campbell. Tong Yi on the sidelines also applauded and praised Campbell's performance. Campbell could still play in the Premier League. The German second league is a walk in the park for him. He's a class above this level. Tong Yi felt confident about that position. He was slightly more concerned about Givany and Nyes. Nyes was good enough for the second division, but he would struggle against stronger opponents. With Campbell beside him, things should be easier, though. Tong Yi couldn't help but think of Senderos. When will Senderos recover? If he gets healthy, our defense will be perfect. Tong Yi eagerly awaited that day. Wow, did you see that? The momentum of the game is shifting. Klinsmann suddenly exclaimed. Fred was surprised. He hadn't noticed. Most of the viewers at home hadn't either. Although Munich 1860 had defended Koblenz's attacks and prevented them from getting any good shots, Koblenz was still the dominant team, besieging Munich 1860. It seemed like just a matter of time before they scored. Koblenz's attack has slowed down a little, Fred said, puzzled, but they still have the initiative. The game had been going on for about 10 minutes. Koblenz, playing away from home, had taken control and were hammering Munich 1860. It looked like they could break through Munich 1860's defense any second. Rappold was beaming, convinced of victory. He glanced at Tong Yi coldly and sneered, "You're done for. We're about to score." He loved being in control. Tong Yi remained calm and composed. "Didn't you notice?" Klinsmann asked. Fred was confused. "Notice what?" Klinsmann shook his head. "You haven't noticed that although Koblenz is still attacking, they're getting further and further away from Munich 1860's goal. If this continues, they'll have a hard time even getting into the midfield." Hearing this, Fred focused his attention on the field. After a moment, Fred gasped. Klinsmann was right. Without anyone realizing it, Munich 1860 had gradually pushed Koblenz's offense away from their goal. It was incredible. Fred realized that Munich 1860's pressure was immense. It wasn't that Koblenz's players didn't want to pass the ball forward, they were being pressured so intensely that they couldn't. They were being marked tightly, making it difficult to hold onto the ball, and their passing lanes were blocked. To avoid losing possession, they were forced to pass the ball backwards, gradually losing ground and moving further away from the goal. Because they still had the ball, they mistakenly believed they were leading the attack and had a huge advantage. This was dangerous. Fred finally understood and was shocked. He looked at Tong Yi on the sidelines, his heart pounding as he studied the young coach's face. That pansy is actually a genius. Koblenz was in trouble. Rappold, Koblenz's coach, hadn't realized it yet, or if he had, he didn't think it was a big deal. Fred shook his head. This guy is no match for Tong Yi. Oh no. A turnover in that position is disastrous. Klinsmann exclaimed, startling Fred, but it wasn't Fred who jumped in fright, it was Rappold. The situation on the field had suddenly changed. Munich 1860 forward Lauter had just dispossessed Stieber Zoltan, who was caught off guard turning backwards. Zoltan was being pressed by two Munich 1860 players. In a panic, he tried to flick the ball back, turn around, use his body to shield the ball, and quickly pass it to a teammate. But Lauter was already waiting behind him. Just as Zoltan flicked the ball, Lauter intercepted it. Zoltan could only watch as Lauter dribbled forward and then sent a through ball. The ball rolled past Maverick's legs and directly to Costa, who was charging forward. Costa, ignoring the goalkeeper, volleyed the ball. The ball flew into the upper right corner of the goal. Munich 1860 took the lead, 1-0. 0:56, high praise from Klinsmann. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. There it is. Goal. Klinsmann yelled. Fred couldn't help but exclaim, unbelievable. Munich 1860 was clearly on their heels, but out of nowhere, they score. Koblenz is just too sloppy. The Allianz Arena erupted as fans went wild, chanting Costa's name. This kid is something else, scoring that goal, his first league game for 1860 Munich, and he nails one home. That's huge. Munich 1860 fans were ecstatic, jumping up and down. Of course, the hardcore Munich 1860 fans were squirming. Do they celebrate or not? It's like that damn softie has led the team to another goal. Meyer looked just as awkward. He was probably wondering if he should suddenly become Tong Yi's biggest cheerleader. This guy's got the team playing great these last 2 games. This new game plan. All Tong Yi, the guy's got some serious game. But he was the ringleader of the anti-Tong crowd. A complete 180 now would be tough, right? Would those radicals tear him apart? Meyer was really caught in the middle. Even more awkward was Koblenz's center back, Maverick. Costa, the goal scorer, turned and flashed him a smile, dripping with sarcasm. Maverick blew a fuse, his anger boiling over. So what, kid? You scored a goal. Big deal. You think you're hot stuff. Seeing that cocky grin, Maverick was ready to explode. He glared at Costa and seethed, "Don't get too comfortable. I'll get you later." Rappold, on the sidelines, looked furious. Munich 1860's goal was a slap in the face, crushing his pre-game confidence. He looked like he could spit nails, but he wasn't about to start yelling at his players. He remained surprisingly calm. Just 1 goal. No biggie. They could bounce back. They couldn't afford to panic and lose their heads. He jumped up, walked to the sideline, and spoke quietly to the players, "Relax. It was a fluke, plain luck. Forget it, we're back to 0-0. Focus. Play hard, and we'll win this." He pumped his fist to encourage them. The Koblenz players nodded. They tried to calm down and act like it was nothing. You've got to give it to Rappold. He really knows how to coach Koblenz. He's definitely got their respect. They hang on his every word. All right. No wonder he was so confident before the game. Too bad he ran into Tong Yi. Surprised? Klinsmann immediately turned to Fred, who looked dazed. Fred blinked, then nodded slightly. That was unexpected, yeah. Koblenz had possession and was pushing the attack. A little slip-up, and they give up a goal. Munich 1860 got lucky there. Many fans agreed, just plain luck for Munich 1860. Klinsmann immediately shook his head. It's more than just luck. That was inevitable, in my opinion. That goal came from smart tactics and teamwork by Munich 1860. Their tactics have blown my mind. Fred and the TV viewers were scratching their heads. Luck, right? If they remembered correctly, that was Munich 1860's first shot of the game. Score. Pure luck, right? Fred promptly asked, "Jürgen, can you break that down for us?" The game was back on, with the same pattern. Koblenz controlled the ball, passing it around, looking for a chance to attack. But Munich 1860 players were all over them, pressuring the ball carrier and cutting off passing lanes. Koblenz had to speed up their passes, but faster passes meant less accurate passes. Plus, with Munich 1860 breathing down their necks, nerves were frayed, pressure mounted, and mistakes piled up. Klinsmann said, "I said it before, Munich 1860 looks like they're on their back foot. They're running themselves ragged, defending, stealing. It looks like they're playing Koblenz's game." But anybody who watches the game knows that constant defending drains energy and makes you more passive. Fred nodded. Klinsmann continued, "It looks like that's happening here. Koblenz keeps attacking, Munich 1860 keeps defending. But if you look closely, you'll see something different. Munich 1860 is definitely working harder, but if you want to say they're at a disadvantage, I don't buy it." Fred stared at Klinsmann, starting to catch on. Klinsmann said, "Look, the situation is the same now. Koblenz is on the attack, but you don't see it. It's almost impossible for Koblenz to pass the football across the midfield." With Klinsmann pointing it out, it clicked for everyone. "Yeah, that's right." Fred nodded. Klinsmann went on, "Koblenz makes a lot of accurate passes. But look again, they're almost all sideways or backwards. They can barely pass forward, even sideways passes are rare. It's like they're just reacting to Munich 1860's pressure. They can't launch an attack, and they risk losing the ball and getting hit with a counterattack." Fred nodded eagerly. Klinsmann said, "That first goal Munich 1860 scored was exactly like that. Looked like a lucky steal and a quick counterattack. But it was part of their plan, something they set up. Fred took a breath. Thinking about it, that was probably true, Klinsmann continued, and did you notice that the instant Munich 1860 steals the ball, they have multiple options up front? Guys in the middle, guys on the wings. And they always seem to find the fastest way to get the ball to the most dangerous spot to score. The fans at home were realizing it, too. Fred couldn't help but glance at Tong Yi on the sidelines. This guy is a genius, Klinsmann added. Tong Yi's tactics are clearly to give up pointless possession and pressure the opponent all over the field. They've moved their defense up to midfield, even the opponent's half. That way, when they steal the ball up high, they have plenty of players involved in the attack. That's powerful. Tong Yi is doing something very right. Fred could only agree. Klinsmann kept going. Of course, this high-pressure thing looks simple, but it's tough to pull off. You need that first wave of pressure, then the second, and the third, layering it on. That requires amazing teamwork, everyone thinking the same way, keeping formation, and creating an advantage in numbers, attacking with more players than they're defending. The players need to have a great understanding of space and timing. It's not something you can learn overnight. Klinsmann was holding back a lot, because he didn't want to get too technical, they wouldn't be able to enjoy the game. And he might not even be able to explain everything, because he still had questions, himself. Phew. Fred took a breath. Tong Yi must be insane. Tong Yi's tactics are so different from what's popular today. Munich 1860 might have found a real gem, Klinsmann also said. Remember, Tong Yi's only been in charge for a month. And he's got them playing like this? Unbelievable. I couldn't do it. I tip my hat to Tong Yi. Those who doubted him should take a good look in the mirror. Fred was realizing that Klinsmann was a big fan of Tong Yi. Back on the field, Koblenz still had the ball. But their fans were the ones sweating. They could see that their team was completely on the back foot. All those sideways and backwards passes. How could they win like that? The Munich 1860 players were squeezing them more and more, and they could sense danger. Rappold, on the sidelines, was frowning. He had noticed the problem. At first, he thought it was a fluke, but now it seemed like Munich 1860 was straight up dominating them. He was racking his brain for a solution. If he didn't find one quick, the game would be over for them. Suddenly, Zoltan, pinned on the wing, got swarmed by two Munich 1860 players, Holebas and Griezmann. Panicked, he shanked his pass. He tried to get it back to the center-back, but he sent it right to Lauter. Koblenz's center-back, Mavrich, charged to defend, trying to keep Lauter from turning, but Lauter seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. He saw Mavrich coming, bailed on the turn, and tapped the ball backwards, past Mavrich's feet. Maverick's jaw dropped. He whirled around and his blood ran cold. The ball rolled into the penalty area, right to Costa, who was sprinting in. It was like a replay of the first goal. Danger. The Koblenz fans sucked in their breaths, terrified, facing the charging Bauken. Costa did a quick stutter step, faking the long-range blast. He shook Bauken just enough, then easily passed the ball through his legs, into the back of the net. Goal. 2-0. Costa again. Munich 1860 again. 0:57, Counterattack starts now. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. 2-0, 25 minutes into the first half. Munich 1860 was up by 2, the Munich 1860 fans went wild. This game was practically in the bag. They sang and danced in the Allianz Arena, some even chanting Tong Yi's name. Yep, already some were cheering for Tong Yi. Fred exclaimed, "Wow, am I hearing things?" Munich 1860 fans are already chanting Tong Yi's name. Did he win them over in just 2 games? Unbelievable. Fred's eyes practically popped out of his head. Klinsmann was equally shocked. He turned to look at Tong Yi, giving him a second look. Just like Frank's protégé, he muttered. Costa was on cloud 9 after scoring his second goal of the game. The fans were chanting Costa's name now, stoked that they weren't just winning, but had a talented forward to boot. Fred exclaimed, "I didn't realize that besides Griezmann and De Bruyne, Munich 1860 had another young gun. This Costa is legit. 2 goals in Bundesliga 2 at his age." Tong Yi's got an eye for talent. Klinsmann nodded slightly. If I remember correctly, Costa was born in October '88, making him just 20, not even 21 yet. He's a bit older than Griezmann and De Bruyne were at that age, but still young. The Munich 1860 fans didn't care about the details. They were cheering, pure and simple. Costa celebrated with a sliding knee tackle. Winkler, surprised, came up to Tong Yi, practically buzzing. "David, we've got this. You're amazing. You're a totally different guy in the real games than you are in practice." To be honest, he was a believer now. He was starting to think Tong Yi might not have been lying. A month ago, the idea of Tong Yi leading Munich 1860 to the top of the Bundesliga seemed impossible. The Munich 1860 bench erupted, jumping up and down with excitement. Munich 1860 was going to win. Jacob's face in the stands was sour. He hadn't expected Tong Yi to be this effective in real games, leading the team to 2 straight wins. It was beyond anything he'd imagined. Damn Tong Yi. But Jacob wasn't the only one with a long face. Little Hoffmann looked even worse. He'd been waiting for Munich 1860 to lose so he could rub Tong Yi's nose in it. Now, he was the one looking like a clown. Little Hoffmann's expression was awful. "I don't believe it, you can't win this game. Come on, Koblenz." Little Hoffmann thought, cheering for Munich 1860's opponent from within the home crowd. Seriously, Tong Yi's got a real eye for talent. How many people knew about these young guys he brought to Munich 1860? And now, they're killing it. Tong Yi is a true talent scout, better than a lot of coaches out there. Munich 1860 hit the jackpot this time, Klinsmann said approvingly. Baker, listening from his box in the stands, smiled, pleased. He saw more than just a young genius. He saw a potential goldmine. Munich 1860 needed money, and Tong Yi was the answer. He was glad he'd chosen him. Stoffs frowned, displeased. How could this pretty boy be so effective? He was a totally different guy in the real games compared to practice. How was he doing it? Seeing Tong Yi's young recruits playing so well made Stoffs even more miserable. These were Tong Yi's guys. If they did well, it meant Tong Yi had a good eye for talent. It meant giving Tong Yi the transfer rights was the right decision. So how could Stoffs get those rights back? Stoffs glared at the field, focusing on Tong Yi. Naturally, Tong Yi didn't know he was public enemy number 1. He only had one thing on his mind, winning this game. Tong Yi went to the sidelines, signaling the Munich 1860 players to keep the pressure on. Koblenz was cracking. The Munich 1860 players nodded in understanding. "What are you doing? You can't screw up a pass like that. Do you even want to keep playing? If not, get off the field. Look at the garbage you're putting out there." Koblenz's head coach, Rappold, was panicking. He ran to the sidelines, screaming at the players, cursing them out. He looked ready to storm onto the field and give them a piece of his mind. He was furious. What kind of playing was this? He roared, "They're pressing you, so speed up the passing, run faster, support each other. If you can't beat them with skill, draw a foul. And if they get rough, get rougher." Rappold was losing it. He yelled, "If you can't play on the ground, then stop trying. Go wide, play the long ball. We've got Kuchi up front. What are you afraid of?" The Koblenz players started to get it. They'd been too focused on ground passes, and Munich 1860 had been exploiting that. Rappold pulled Kucher aside. "You stay up front and wait for those long passes. Stick to that Georgian guy, he can't handle you." Got it. Kuchi glanced at Givany and eyes, assessed his size, and nodded firmly. "Got it, boss." Okay, if they couldn't do complicated, they'd keep it simple. Rappold's adjustment was good, even if it could have come sooner. Soon, the players were back on the field, and the game resumed. Rappold stood nervously on the sidelines, his eyes glued to the action. If this change didn't work, they were done for. He was ticked off. How could he lose to this softy? Come on. Under Costa's relentless pressure, Mavric panicked and lofted a pass to Kuchi's head in the frontcourt. Kuchi used his body to shield the Georgian international behind him. No matter how hard Givany and Nids tried to push him off, Kuchi held his ground. The Georgian center-back got flustered. Seeing Kuchi jump for the ball, he jumped behind him and gave him a shove. Kuchi lost his balance and went down at the edge of the Munich 1860 penalty area, whistle, The referee called a foul. Lawbird clenched his fists, yelling, "That's it. Fight back, starting now." Tong Yi immediately ran to the sidelines, yelling to Campbell, "Saul, go help Matt, he's getting killed out there." Tong Yi could see the Georgian international was struggling against the Finnish international. Kuchi knew how to use his body. Givany and Eyes was at a disadvantage physically. Kuchi had been avoiding the stronger Campbell, targeting Givany and Eyes. That was what he wanted. Rappold knew what he was doing. Foul, the Georgian international fouled. He didn't have a good way to handle that ball. The foul was a bit reckless. So what if Kuchi got the header? They might not have created a scoring chance. The Georgian international lost his cool. Klinsmann said, the Munich 1860 fans were worried. A direct free kick right in front of the penalty area was a prime scoring opportunity. For Koblenz, who had been on the defensive all game, this set piece was critical. They couldn't waste it. Rappold was on edge. He stood on the sidelines, his eyes glued to the field, praying. Zoltan stood over the ball, playing with it. Though young, Zoltan, an Austria U21 international, was talented. His wing breakthroughs were sharp, and he had a knack for passing. His footwork was good, and his free kicks weren't bad either. He had even scored directly from a free kick before. He'd once scored a direct free kick for the Austrian national youth team. Giving this young guy the ball showed how much the Koblenz team trusted his footwork. This could be dangerous. Tong Yi immediately ran to the sidelines, reminding the Munich 1860 players to defend this free kick, and don't give the Austrian an inch. Got it. Then, Tong Yi looked at De Gea in the goal. He had high hopes for him. While this guy wasn't great at saving penalty kicks, he was good at these types of free kicks. Come on, little David. Tong Yi thought. Because his name was David, and De Gea was also named David, the team called De Gea Little David. Zoltan stared at De Gea in the goal. He'd never heard of the guy, and he wasn't impressed. He was confident he could put the ball in the back of the net. This was his chance to make a name for himself. De Gea looked calm, carefully directing the wall. He returned to his position, focused and ready. His eyes were locked on Zoltan in front of the ball, and he was thinking, come on. Whistle, star. The referee blew the whistle. Zoltan started his run and blasted the ball. It flew with incredible speed, cleared the jumping wall, and headed for the upper right corner of the goal. The faces of the Munich 1860 fans turned pale. It was over. 0:58, fantastic De Gea, bad luck. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Zoltan took off, putting everything into that kick. Boom. The ball exploded off his foot, rocketing upward and outward. It sailed over Givany and Eyes, who leaped in vain, tracing a beautiful arc as it hurtled towards the upper right corner of the goal. The Munich 1860 fans were stunned by the sheer bend of the shot. Even more impressive was the ball's blistering speed. This was a real game-changer. On the sidelines, Rappold clenched his fists, his eyes burning with excitement. We got this. Fred yelled. The angle, the curve, the speed, everything was perfect. This was a guaranteed goal. The Koblenz fans who traveled far and wide punched the air, screaming with joy. Finally, a score. Tong Yi's eyes widened. Danger. In his gut, he knew this one was going in. The angle was just too sharp, the speed too intense. This is it. But just when everyone thought it was a done deal, one person disagreed. David De Gea. He tracked the ball, moved his feet like lightning, covering ground laterally. He launched himself off the ground, soaring towards that upper right corner. He roared, "Not today." He stretched, reaching with every ounce of his being, trying to get a hand on it. Not on my watch. Even De Gea wasn't sure he could stop it, but he refused to give up. No matter how slim the chance, he had to try. This one's going in for Koblenz. Klinsmann thought. The Koblenz faithful leaped to their feet, fists raised, ready to celebrate. The Munich 1860 fans' hearts sank. It's over. Wait, what? Not on my watch. Just when the ball was about to tuck inside the upper right post, a hand appeared, smack. The ball collided with a resounding thud, instantly deflecting out of bounds. The stadium went silent. No one could believe he'd actually blocked it. The Koblenz fans were frozen in place. Their raised fists hung in the air, smiles plastered on their faces, but their eyes were wide with disbelief. What just happened? How did he save that? Holy cow, who is this goalie? He's messing with us. There's no way he should have reached that. It defies physics. The Koblenz fans seethed with disappointment. They started mentally cursing De Gea. That little so-and-so. He ruined everything. Rappold's face darkened. Not even that. Yes. In front of the net, De Gea pumped his fists, ecstatic. He was beyond thrilled. He'd actually saved it. Even he was shocked. It was better than scoring a goal himself, De Gea celebrated, while the Koblenz players wore looks of utter dismay. They were this close, what a waste. Zoltan was gutted. He'd been about to turn and celebrate. He couldn't help but glance at De Gea, then sprinted toward the corner flag, corner kick. Koblenz gets another chance. Wow! A miraculous save. The most incredible save I've seen in ages. De Gea, the young man, is something else. His reactions, his speed. Wow! A new star is born. Fry exclaimed. De Gea had truly exceeded expectations. Klinsmann chimed in, that was a beautiful save. De Gea is fantastic. I don't know where Tong Yi found this kid, but if he keeps growing, he'll be unstoppable. Klinsmann was clearly impressed. Tong Yi shouted from the sidelines, great job, David. Keep it up, don't give them an inch. I want this win. De Gea gave Tong Yi a thumbs up, signaling that he understood. Tong Yi relaxed a little, though disappointed. Koblenz didn't dwell on it. They quickly got back into position for the corner kick. Corner kicks are prime scoring opportunities, and they weren't about to squander this one. Rappold frantically signaled to the Koblenz players, offering what seemed like specific instructions. He clearly couldn't sit still any longer. Tong Yi noticed all this, then turned to his own players. Focus. Stay tight. Don't let anyone get free. Got it. Campbell immediately shadowed Maverick, the opposing center-back, giving him no breathing room. Zoltan raised his right hand to the players in the penalty area, holding up two fingers. Tactic number 2, Munich 1860 had no idea what that meant, but the Koblenz players looked eager and ready to execute. Beep. The referee blew his whistle. Zoltan took a running start and whipped the ball into the penalty area. The Koblenz players started their choreographed movements, running interference, trying to create space for Kuchi and draw defenders away. Danger! Tong Yi shouted. Sure enough, De Kiki peeled off to the far post, leaped, and powered a header toward the goal. Header! Fred roared. De Kiki outjumped Koblenz, connecting powerfully. The ball screamed toward the Munich 1860 goal. It happened so fast, De Gea barely saw it. He just reacted instinctively, reaching out to deflect the ball out of bounds. Oh my God! Unbelievable! 2 incredible saves in under a minute. Munich 1860 dodged a bullet. This De Gea is something else. Fred exclaimed. The Munich 1860 fans chanted De Gea's name, ecstatic. Their team had unearthed another gem. A collective realization rippled through the crowd. So many talented players were emerging from their team. After the Bender twins left, they thought the talent well had run dry. But now, even more talent. They were thrilled. The Koblenz fans were fuming, unleashing a torrent of criticism on De Gea. Corner kick. Koblenz again. This time, Tong Yi reminded his players to keep a close eye on Kuchi, not giving him another free shot. The Munich 1860 players nodded, acknowledging the instructions. They tightened their defense, sticking to their assignments like glue. Zoltan scanned the Munich 1860 penalty area, then raised his right hand, again holding up 2 fingers, still using tactic number 2. The Munich 1860 players were incredulous. Did he really think they were that stupid? Using the same play twice in a row? Did he really think they wouldn't recognize the tell? The Munich 1860 players rolled their eyes. Zoltan was clueless. At that moment, Zoltan heard the whistle. He charged toward the ball and fired it into the penalty area. The ball sailed toward the near post. Everyone in Munich 1860 had guessed wrong. A collective gasp went up as they saw De Kiki sprinting towards the near post, unchallenged. Danger. Munich 1860 was in trouble. De Kiki raised his arms in the air, almost screaming with joy. This was a sure goal, but just as the ball was about to cross the line, a hand appeared, miraculously deflecting it. The Koblenz fans sank into despair. Not De Gea again. What can't this guy do? The Koblenz faithful were terrified. With De Gea in goal, they felt doomed. This game was cursed, but then, in an instant, they were transported to paradise. The ball, deflected by De Gea, struck Givenjan Nye's arm in the penalty area. Kuchi, who had been devastated moments earlier, raised his right hand and screamed, "Handball." He handled the ball. Penalty. Beep. The referee pointed to the spot. The momentum shifted. Just before half-time, Koblenz got a lucky break, a penalty that could change everything. The Munich 1860 fans felt cheated. It was accidental. He wasn't even facing the ball. It was impossible to react. This shouldn't be a penalty. Damn the ref. This was a bad call. But the referee stood firm. It was a penalty. 0:59, penalty kick. The situation took a turn for the worse. You are listening at NovelsThe. Penalty. Koblenz has a chance. Talk about a game changer. Fred was losing it. Who would have guessed a penalty kick at the end of the first half? The Koblenz fans went wild, jumping for joy. What a golden opportunity. Rappold pumped his fists, also ecstatic. His chance to turn things around had arrived. He had to seize it. The Koblenz players mobbed each other in celebration. Meanwhile, the Munich 1860 players surrounded the ref, arguing that it wasn't a handball. From his position, Givenjanidze couldn't have seen the ball coming. No way it was intentional, definitely not a penalty. Campbell pleaded, "Ref, it was accidental." "Come on, that's never a penalty." The referee just waved them off, standing firm. Penalty kick. Campbell and the others were at a loss. Givenjanidze even tried to show the ref how his arm was tensed. He was robbed. No penalty here. The Munich 1860 players are all over the ref, trying to explain it wasn't a penalty, Klinsmann commented. But looking at the replay, it seems pretty clear. Givenjanidze didn't mean to, but his hand definitely changed the ball's trajectory. Textbook handball. The ref got it right. Bad luck, but that's all. From his earlier commentary, you could tell Klinsmann was pulling for Munich 1860, especially because he's a big Tong Yi fan. But even he couldn't argue with the facts. Props to Klinsmann for staying objective. Fred chimed in, exactly. If Givenjanidze hadn't blocked it, the ball would have landed right at Rico Morak's feet. He'd have an open goal. A penalty kick is a fair call. The Munich 1860 fans weren't buying it. In their eyes, the ref was bought. Boos rained down as they screamed, "Black whistle." "How much did they pay you, you crooked ref?" That they were furious. But the referee wasn't budging. Tong Yi knew it probably was a penalty. Still, as Munich 1860's head coach, he went to the sidelines to put pressure on the fourth official. "Sir, unintentional handball. This shouldn't be a penalty." Tong Yi, he knew it wouldn't change the call, but he had to try. He hoped to influence the ref, maybe get a little leeway later in the game. No dice anyway. Everyone's locked on this penalty kick now. Koblenz's forward, De Kiki, walked to the spot, ball in hand. Looked like he was taking it. Tong Yi frowned. De Kiki just joined Koblenz this summer. Rappold giving him this responsibility meant the kid must be good at penalties. Tong Yi felt a knot in his stomach. This could be bad. De Gea was a great goalie, but penalty kicks weren't his strength. This could be a disaster. Tong Yi sighed. He really hadn't expected to give up a goal so late in the half at the Sangban Stadium. It was a terrible break for Munich 1860. all he could do now was pray De Gea pulled off a miracle. The Munich 1860 fans roared, chanting De Gea's name, hoping the young gun could shock them. This is it, the big test for this young keeper. But it's a tough spot to be in. His first Pro League debut, and he's facing a penalty. Talk about pressure. I hope it doesn't mess with his head. He's got so much potential, Fred said, chewing his nails. Klinsmann shook his head. It was a brutal situation for De Gea. Yeah, let's hope this doesn't shake his confidence, he added. All eyes were on the field, on De Gea in front of the net. The Munich 1860 fans were sweating bullets, silently cheering him on. Kucci approached the penalty spot, cool as a cucumber. Looked like he didn't have a care in the world. That only piled more pressure on De Gea. Tong Yi could only watch. He didn't know much about this to Kucci, nothing about his penalty kick style, so he couldn't give De Gea any useful advice. This was all on De Gea. Tong Yi willed him on in his head. Campbell clapped De Gea on the back. Don't sweat it. Just dive. We're still ahead even if he scores. Got it. De Gea nodded, but his eyes stayed glued to the ball. He knew how important this was. Campbell sighed. Not a good sign. The stadium was thick with tension. Fans held their breath, afraid to even twitch. Whistle blows. De Kucci charged, planted his foot, and boom. The ball rocketed towards the lower right corner. He saved it. De Gea makes the save. Incredible. This kid is something special. I'm telling you, he's going to be a star. Fred screamed, going ballistic. The Munich 1860 fans erupted, chanting De Gea's name in disbelief. The Koblenz fans looked like they just lost their best friend. Whistle blows again. The ref immediately signaled the penalty was no good, and they'd retake it. Before Tong Yi could even celebrate, his joy turned to fury. What? Retake it? Was this guy out to get Munich 1860? Tong Yi went ballistic on the fourth official, demanding answers. The Koblenz side was handed a lifeline. They were stunned. Oh man, here we go again. The ref says a Munich 1860 player entered the box early. Let's see the replay. Whoops, Holba was inside the area. This is tough, Fred said, stunned. Klinsmann agreed. De Gea made a perfect save. But his teammate jumped the gun. Can't really blame the ref. Munich 1860 is having some seriously bad luck. The Munich 1860 players were furious, but the ref wasn't listening. They had to retake the penalty. That put a mountain of pressure on De Gea, and on whoever was taking the kick, too. This time, Koblenz was about to make a substitution, but Kucci refused to back down. He stepped up to the spot again. Tong Yi glanced at Rappold, impressed by the guy's guts. Letting the same guy take it again. Some Koblenz fans were already calling for Kucci to be pulled. Don't let him blow it again. But Rappold stuck with his guy, sending Kucci back to the spot. Munich 1860 needs to make sure no one jumps into the box this time. Otherwise, De Gea's gonna be in for a long day, Klinsmann said, feeling bad for De Gea. The Munich 1860 fans chanted De Gea's name, urging him on. Unfortunately, this time he couldn't pull off another miracle. De Kucci blasted the ball to the upper left corner. De Gea guessed right again, and got a hand on it, but it wasn't enough. The ball flew past him and into the net. De Gea was crushed. Tong Yi was speechless, not at De Gea, or Holebas, but at the ref. Was this guy serious? They could have gotten away with it. Did the ref have something against him? The Koblenz players went wild. Rappold sprinted onto the field, pumping his fist. They had a chance. They could still turn this game around. As soon as the penalty went in, the ref blew the whistle for halftime. Munich 1860 led 2-1 at the break, but they weren't happy about it. The instant the whistle blew, they swarmed the ref, demanding an explanation. Why the penalty? The ref just ignored them, walking off the field with a stone face. At the start of the second half, the ref immediately awarded another penalty kick to Koblenz. Said Gavanjanidze committed a foul in the box. Another penalty. A foul? Fred exploded. The Munich 1860 fans went pale. Not again. The ref pointed to the spot. Penalty. 0:60, Koblenz equalizes the score. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Damn it, Siete. Tong Yi threw his hands up, shouting loud enough for everyone to hear. A penalty? Seriously? Ref, are you blind? Unbelievable, a penalty kick. The second half just started, and Koblenz gets another one. This game has taken a seriously weird turn, the commentator exclaimed. Klinsmann's eyes widened. That's a penalty, that the Munich 1860 fans were furious. They jumped to their feet, screaming at the referee. They felt totally screwed over, convinced it was a rigged call. The Koblenz fans went wild, cheering like maniacs. Talk about an opportunity. This was a golden chance for Koblenz. Rappold pumped his fist, ecstatic. This game was full of surprises for him. De Gea charged toward the ref, yelling, "That's no foul." He took a dive, 100% a dive, that the ref just wagged his finger, telling De Gea to shut it. He pointed to the penalty spot, firm as ever. Godfather was livid. Hands behind his back, he stormed up to the referee, trying to show that his defending had been clean. He hadn't touched the guy. That big coochie just ran right into him, totally faking it. See, Koblenz had come out strong in the second half, pushing right into the Munich 1860 box. But Coochie, on the ball, got walled off by Godfather, with no room to cut inside. Just as he was about to be forced out of bounds, Coochie suddenly poked the ball forward, and it bounced off Godfather's leg. He went down like a sack of potatoes. Penalty. The ref blew his whistle and called it without hesitation, a total joke. But the ref wasn't budging. Tong Yi was so mad he charged the fourth official. Is he trying to screw us over? Did he bet on spinach.com that we'd lose? The fourth official's face darkened. He glared at Tong Yi. Mr. Tong Yi, watch your mouth. Control yourself, and don't make accusations. Otherwise, we'll have to ask you to leave the field. His words were like ice, a clear warning. Tong Yi was still fuming. Seriously? 2 penalties in 2 halves. What's going on? It's obviously not a penalty, why call it? It's gotta be fixed. He's got money on the game. The fourth official's eyes narrowed, and he shot a look at Tong Yi. Then he spoke into his headset to the referee on the field. The ref immediately turned and stared, pushing through the cluster of Munich 1860 players and heading for the sideline. Looks like Tong Yi's in trouble. Did he get too heated? Fred wondered. Klinsmann frowned. Can't blame Tong Yi. That call was ridiculous. I'd be going nuts too. To call 2 penalties, one right after the other, is pretty shady. Fred nodded in agreement. Plus, the replay shows it wasn't a foul. The guy dove. To call that a penalty is insane. Man, this is a huge blow to Munich 1860. Hopefully, they won't let it get to them and they can still pull out a win. Klinsmann added. The Munich 1860 fans were losing it, screaming insults at the ref. That probably just made things worse. The ref looked like he was ready to kill someone. He walked up to Tong Yi and warned him coldly, "Mr. Tong Yi, control yourself. I have the right to eject you from the stadium, understand?" Tong Yi sneered. Oh yeah? Then you can really do whatever you want, huh? How much did you bet on the game? The ref's face turned purple. He was seething. Winkler grabbed Tong Yi, giving him a look that said, "Hold it together." Without a word, the ref pulled a yellow card from his pocket and flashed it at Tong Yi. Whoa, a yellow card. The ref showed Tong Yi a yellow. This is, well, Tong Yi was out of line, but you can see why. The referee's decisions have been pretty questionable, Fred said quickly. Klinsmann said, bad calls are part of the game. Tong Yi overreacted. As a coach, he needs to stay calm. He's still young and needs to learn to control his emotions. I hope he can learn from this. Tong Yi looked ready to explode, but Winkler and Stekris hauled him away before he could earn a second yellow. Seeing Tong Yi pulled back, the ref turned and walked off. Everyone held their breath, fearing he'd turn around and give Tong Yi another yellow, which would mean a red and an ejection. Even being dragged away, Tong Yi kept yelling. Luckily, the ref couldn't hear him, or he might have spun around and tossed another card. Penalty stands. Munich 1860 needs to put this behind them and focus on stopping the shot. That's the best way to fire back at the haters, Fred said urgently. The Munich 1860 fans channeled all their rage at the referee, cursing him like crazy. But it wouldn't change a thing. The Munich 1860 players were pushed out of the penalty area as Kuchi stepped up to take the kick. He placed the ball, staring down De Gea as if trying to intimidate him. De Gea didn't care. He just focused on the ball. The stadium went silent, every eye locked on the penalty box, everyone holding their breath. Beep, star, the ref blew the whistle. Kuchi took a deep breath, focused on De Gea, took his run up, and at the last second, glanced at the upper right corner and slammed his foot into the ball. Whack, star, the ball soared through the air. De Gea launched himself toward the lower left corner. Kuchi had been trying to throw him off, but De Gea read it perfectly, diving towards the correct side. The ball was just too fast, and his outstretched hand couldn't get there in time. The Munich 1860 fans were in despair. Clang, the ball slammed into the post, ricocheted, and bounced into the net. Goal. The penalty is good. De Gea guessed right, but it wasn't enough. It's 2-2. Koblenz ties the game with 2 penalty kicks, Fred announced. Rappold was ecstatic, turning to Tong Yi and pumping his fist in his face. We're gonna win this game. Tong Yi glared at him. The villain wins this round. Enjoy it while it lasts. We're still gonna win. Couch, who scored the goal, sprinted past De Gea, then slid across the field, celebrating and taunting him. These 2 penalty kicks could change everything. This next part of the game is anyone's guess. Munich 1860 is in trouble. How will Tong Yi respond? Klinsmann asked, his eyes glued to Tong Yi, waiting for his move. Tong Yi took a deep breath, trying to calm down. He knew he couldn't lose it now. He walked to the sideline and signaled the Munich 1860 players to stay focused. They were the better team. If they didn't screw up, they should win. Forget about the penalties. Calm down. We can win this. Now, give those Koblenz guys a lesson. Show them that all the tricks in the world can't beat Real's skill. That the players nodded, clenching their fists, determined to make Koblenz pay. The game resumed. Koblenz, buzzing from tying the score, went on the attack. They pressed forward, a pack of wolves smelling blood. Tong Yi wasn't worried. He was thrilled. This was Munich 1860's chance. He wasn't afraid of an attack. He wanted them to attack. He reminded his players on the field to be ready for a counterattack. On the field, Matic and Griezmann double-teamed, stealing the ball from Zoltan and launching a quick counterattack. Rappold panicked, shouting, "Get back! Watch the counterattack!"